The transmission arrived on a Tuesday morning, interrupting every screen, every speaker, every communication device on Earth simultaneously. No warning, no fanfare. Just a voice that seemed to emanate from the quantum foam itself, speaking in perfect, emotionless English, and simultaneously in every other human language. Species designation, human. Planet designation, Terra 3. You have been selected for integration into the dominion of the Velkeith. Compliance is not optional. Resistance is futile. You have 72 of your rotational periods to prepare for harvesting. Commander Rix Hendren stood in the command center of Luna Station 7, watching the blue marble of Earth hang in the viewport like a fragile ornament. Around him, holographic displays showed panic spreading across the planet's surface. Markets crashed. Governments convened emergency sessions. Religious leaders proclaimed everything from the apocalypse to salvation. "Sir," called Lieutenant Valen Cross from her console, her voice tight with controlled fear. "We're detecting massive gravitational anomalies at the edge of the system. Whatever sent that message, it's big." Hendren's weathered face remained impassive. At 63, he'd served through the resource wars, the Mars uprising, and the belt conflicts. He'd seen humanity at its worst and its best. But this was different. This wasn't human fighting human. This was something else entirely. "How big?" he asked. "Preliminary scans suggest structures the size of continents, sir. Multiple contacts. They're holding position just beyond Pluto's orbit." Defense Minister Kira Voss materialized in the holographic conference chamber, her face pale, but determined. Around the translucent table, the leaders of Earth's Unified Defense Council flickered into existence one by one. President Nix Calderon of the Americas Federation, Premier Zeva Okonkwo of the African Union, Chancellor Rael Nakamura of the Pacific. "Collective. Options," Voss said without preamble. "We could try to negotiate," suggested Premier Okonkwo. "Perhaps they want resources, technology—" "Did you hear the transmission?" Chancellor Nakamura interrupted. "They said harvesting. Not trade. Not alliance. Harvesting." President Calderon leaned forward, his mechanical arm whirring softly. "What about our defenses? The orbital platforms, the lunar installations?" "Commander," Hendren cleared his throat. "Sir, with respect, we built those systems to fight other humans. We have no idea what we're facing here." "Then we find out," Minister Voss said firmly. "Send a probe to their position. Full sensor sweep. I want to know everything. Ship design, energy signatures, defensive capabilities." "Minister, Lieutenant." Cross spoke up hesitantly. "Regulations require civilian evacuation protocols for first contact scenarios." "There won't be any evacuations," Voss cut her off. "Where would we go? This is our home. Our only home." The silence that followed was heavy with implication. Every person in that room understood the mathematics of extinction. 7 billion souls on one small planet with nowhere to run. Hendren found himself thinking of his daughter Liza, safe in the underground cities of New Geneva. Of his grandson who'd never seen a real sunset, born in the sterile halls of Titan Colony, of countless generations who'd struggled and fought and died to build something worth preserving. "Send the probe," he said quietly, "and begin charging. The planetary defense grid. All stations, all platforms." "Sir," Cross's voice cracked slightly. "The grid was designed for asteroid deflection and pirate suppression. Against something this large, it's what we have, Lieutenant. And sometimes, what you have is enough." Through the viewport, Earth continued its ancient rotation, blue and white and beautiful, unaware that it had just declared war on the stars themselves. The probe returned data that defied comprehension. Ships, if they could be called ships, that stretched for thousands of kilometers. Not built, but grown like vast crystalline organisms feeding on the cosmic void. Their hulls pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that suggested a technology beyond current human understanding. Dr. Quinn Rothwell stood before the assembled War Council in the secure bunker beneath Mount Rushmore, her hands trembling as she manipulated the holographic display. The energy readings are inconsistent with known physics. Their propulsion system appears to manipulate space-time itself. And these structures here, she highlighted sections of the alien vessels. They're not weapons as we understand them. They're processing facilities. Processing what? Asked General Tarn Volkov, his scarred face grim. Organic matter, refined to its basic components. The efficiency suggests they've done this before, many times. The room fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Outside, the first of Earth's children had begun to flee to the outer colonies, those lucky enough to have transport. But the vast majority remained, trapped by gravity and circumstance on a world that had suddenly become a target. Admiral Kes Okoye, commander of the Solar Defense Fleet, stood before a tactical display showing humanity's assembled forces. 237 warships, from massive dreadnoughts to nimble fighters, orbital platforms bristling with rail guns and particle beams. Luna Station's experimental singularity cannon, untested but theoretically devastating. They outnumber us, she said simply. But numbers aren't everything. The Spartans proved that at Thermopylae. The Spartans lost at Thermopylae, muttered Colonel Dex Harrington from his position near the communications array. But they made their stand matter, Okoye replied. Every civilization needs its defining moment. This is ours. The alien transmission had been repeating every 6 hours, countdown and all. 67 hours remaining. The message never changed, never wavered, delivered with the mechanical precision of an automated system. As if humanity's response was irrelevant to the outcome. That assumption would prove costly for the Velketh. In the Deep Space Monitoring Station orbiting Jupiter, Captain Jorik Vex reported the first movement from the alien fleet. They're advancing. Slow but steady. Current trajectory suggests they'll reach Earth's orbit in approximately 43 hours. Before their deadline, observed Minister Voss, her voice tight with controlled tension. They're not waiting for our surrender. Good, said Commander Hendren from Luna Station. Neither are we. Across the solar system, humanity's scattered forces began to converge. The mining platforms of the asteroid belt loaded their industrial lasers with military-grade focusing crystals. The research station at Europa deployed experimental weapons that had never been intended for combat. Even the generation ship Perseverance, built for the long journey to Proxima Centauri, turned back toward Earth with its fusion engines at full burn. Dr. Rothwell had been analyzing the alien transmissions when she made the discovery that would change everything. Their communication array, she announced to the War Council. It's not just broadcasting to us. It's receiving data from their ships, tactical information, sensor readings, biological scan results. What does that mean? Asked President Calderon. It means they're networked, connected. If we can disrupt their communications, we might be able to blind them, at least temporarily. General Volkov leaned forward. How? The same way we'd disrupt any networked system. We introduce chaos, misinformation. We make their own technology work against them. It was an audacious plan. Instead of simply meeting the alien force with weapons, they would strike at the one thing every advanced civilization depended on: information. As the alien fleet drew closer, humanity's defenses took on a dual nature. Physical weapons prepared to meet physical threats, while Earth's best hackers and quantum programmers worked frantically to develop an electronic weapon capable of penetrating alien systems. The irony wasn't lost on anyone involved. Humanity, barely 3 centuries removed from horse-drawn carriages, was preparing to fight a cyber war against beings who had mastered interstellar travel. But as Admiral Okoye watched the tactical displays update with enemy positions, she felt something she hadn't expected. Hope. Not because victory was certain. It wasn't. but because humanity was responding as it always had to impossible odds, with stubborn, bloody-minded refusal to give up. 36 hours before the BlackHFY deadline, their advanced scout vessels broke through the heliopause. Sleek, predatory ships that moved with unsettling organic grace, they ignored Jupiter's orbital defense platforms and made directly for the inner system. Commander Jace Ashworth of the destroyer Relentless had the honor of humanity's first shot. "Target acquired," reported Weapons Officer Tim Bradshaw, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "Range, 600,000 kilometers. Firing solution locked." "Fire," Ashworth commanded. The ship's main railgun discharged with a thunder that reverberated through the hull. The tungsten rod accelerated to 15% of light speed, carrying kinetic energy equivalent to a small nuclear weapon. At that velocity, even a gram of matter became devastating. The projectile struck the lead alien scout dead center. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ship's crystalline hull began to fracture, spreading outward like cracks in ice. Atmosphere vented in brilliant plumes as the vessel's organic components died in the vacuum. "Direct hit!" shouted Lieutenant Nix Thorne from sensors. "Target destroyed!" The cheer that went up from the bridge was echoed across every human vessel in the system. They could be hurt. They could be killed. The aliens' response was swift and devastating. Energy beams lanced out from the remaining scouts, weapons that seemed to tear holes in space itself. The destroyer Vindication simply ceased to exist, its atoms scattered across 10,000 cubic kilometers of vacuum. "All ships, evasive maneuvers!" Admiral Okoye's voice crackled across the fleet communication network. "Pattern Delta 7. Make them work for every shot." What followed was a running battle across the asteroid belt. Human ships darting between tumbling rocks while alien vessels pursued with relentless efficiency. The mining platform Ceres station proved surprisingly effective, its industrial equipment repurposed into weapons that could crack alien hulls. But for every alien ship destroyed, humanity lost 3. The mathematics of attrition were not in their favor. On Earth, Dr. Rothwell made a breakthrough that would shift the balance. "I've found their communication frequency," she announced to the War Council. "More than that, I've found their language." The BlackHFY communicated through quantum entanglement, their thoughts shared instantaneously across impossible distances. It was elegant, efficient, and completely vulnerable to the virus Dr. Rothwell had spent 30 sleepless hours creating. "It's not really a virus in the traditional sense," she explained as her team prepared for transmission. "It's more like aggressive noise. Random quantum fluctuations that will overwhelm their communication network. They'll be able to function individually, but their coordination will collapse." "How long will it last?" asked Minister Voss. "Unknown. Could be minutes, could be hours. But it should give us an opening." The virus uploaded through humanity's deep space communication array, a stream of quantum chaos aimed at the heart of the BlackHFY fleet. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Alien ships that had moved with perfect coordination suddenly began colliding with each other. Formation patterns dissolved into confusion. "Now!" Admiral Okoye commanded. "All ships! Full! Assault! Target their command vessels!" The solar defense fleet struck like a pack of wolves, concentrated firepower tearing into the larger alien vessels while they struggled to restore communications. The space around Jupiter became a debris field of crystalline fragments and burning atmosphere. But the victory was temporary. As Dr. Rothwell had predicted, the aliens adapted. New communication protocols emerged, hardened against human interference. Within hours, their coordination was restored, and they were angry. "Incoming transmission," reported Colonel Harrington from the communication station. They're speaking directly to us." The voice that emerged from the speakers was no longer the emotionless broadcast of the original ultimatum. It carried undertones of surprise, then grudging respect, then something that might have been amusement. "Humans of Terra 3, You have demonstrated tactical competence. This is unexpected. The Dominion offers modified terms. Submit now, and your species will be granted the honor of serving as warriors in our expansion. Refuse and face complete extinction. The War Council looked to Minister Voss, who stood quietly for a long moment, considering. Outside the bunker, 7 billion people waited for an answer that would determine their fate. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of human history. Every struggle, every victory, every moment when civilization had chosen courage over comfort. Tell them humanity has a counteroffer, she said. They can leave our system now, or we'll send them home in pieces. The Velketh response came not in words, but in action. Their main fleet entered the solar system like a plague of locusts, thousands of vessels ranging from nimble fighters to massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed Earth's moon. The alien armada moved with renewed purpose, their previous tactical caution replaced by overwhelming force. Fleet Admiral Okoye watched the sensor displays from her flagship, the Terran Defiance, as humanity's last organized resistance took formation. 112 ships remained operational, everything from ancient frigates to experimental prototypes that had never been meant for battle. Signal from Luna Command, reported Communications Officer Lix Becker. The planetary defense grid is fully charged. All orbital platforms report ready. Okoye nodded grimly. The grid represented humanity's last technological triumph, a network of energy weapons powered by fusion reactors buried deep within the moon. Theoretically capable of cracking continents, it had never been tested at full power. Today would change that. All ships, take position behind the lunar defense perimeter, she commanded. When they come for Earth, they'll have to go through us. First. The alien fleet approached in a formation that spoke of absolute confidence. No deception, no subtlety, just overwhelming power applied with surgical precision. Their weapons began charging at extreme range, energy signatures that made human instruments scream warnings. On Earth's surface, Emergency Coordinator Rix Delmar stood in the Global Defense Center, watching civilian evacuation reports flood in. The underground cities could hold perhaps 50 million people. The rest would face whatever came with nothing but hope and stubborn human pride. "Sir," called analyst Cora Ming from her station, "we're detecting massive power buildup in their lead vessels. Whatever they're planning..." The first alien volley erupted across space like a miniature star going nova. Coherent energy beams struck Luna Station 7, vaporizing its outer hull in seconds. Commander Hendren's last transmission was a simple acknowledgement. Grid online. All stations. Fire at will. The moon lit up like a second sun as every weapon in the defense grid discharged simultaneously. Particle beams and plasma bolts reached across the void to rake alien hulls. The smaller scout vessels died instantly, their crystalline structures unable to withstand the concentrated firepower. But the larger ships survived, their hulls scarred but intact. They pressed forward, returning, fire with weapons that seemed to bend reality itself. One by one, the orbital platforms died, brilliant explosions marking humanity's diminishing resistance. In the depths of space, Captain Vex of the Jupiter Monitoring Station made a desperate decision. His facility wasn't armed, wasn't armored, wasn't designed for combat, but it was moving at significant velocity, its orbit taking it on a collision course with the alien formation. "All hands, abandon ship," he ordered over the intercom. "This is not a drill. Emergency pods launch in 30 seconds. But Vex didn't head for the pods. Instead, he remained at his station, manually overriding the safety protocols that would prevent a fusion reactor overload. As the alien ships grew larger in his viewports, he whispered a prayer to whatever gods might be listening. "For Earth," he said, and triggered the cascade. The monitoring station became a brief second sun, its fusion reactor going critical in a chain reaction that consumed everything within a 1,000-kilometer radius. 3 alien dreadnoughts vanished in the nuclear fire, their ancient hulls no match for the primal fury of stellar fusion. The gesture was magnificent and futile. For every alien ship destroyed, 10 more pressed forward. The mathematical reality remained unchanged. Humanity was losing. But something else was happening, something the BlackHFY hadn't anticipated. As news of each heroic last stand spread across the human communication networks, resistance stiffened. Civilian ships, cargo haulers, passenger liners, even maintenance pods began joining the defense fleet. Weapons or no weapons, training or no training, they came. "Admiral," reported Lieutenant Nix Thorne from the sensor station, her voice filled with wonder, "I'm reading over 3,000 new contacts, civilian vessels from across the system. They're all converging on Earth." Okoye felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel since the crisis began. Pride. Not in victory. Victory seemed increasingly unlikely. But in the simple, magnificent fact that when extinction came calling, humanity had refused to go quietly. "Signal all vessels," she commanded. "Welcome to the fight. Today we show the galaxy what humans are made of." The reinforcements were untrained, underarmed, and mostly civilian. But they brought something more valuable than weapons. They brought the collective fury of a species that had never learned when to quit. As the alien fleet closed the final distance to Earth, they found themselves facing not just humanity's military, but its entire civilization. Every ship that could fly, every weapon that could fire, every soul that refused to kneel. The real battle was about to begin. The battle for Earth's orbit became a storm of light and fury that illuminated the solar system. Alien energy weapons carved through human formations, while railgun rounds and nuclear missiles sought crystalline hulls. The space around humanity's homeworld filled with debris, metal fragments, organic matter, and the dreams of civilizations. Dr. Rothwell, working frantically in her underground laboratory, made a discovery that would prove crucial. "They're ships," she announced over the emergency channel. "They're not just grown, they're alive. Semi-sentient organisms bred for war. That's why our electronic warfare worked. They're not computers, they're brains." The implications were staggering. Every alien vessel was a living being, capable of independent thought, but connected to the collective consciousness of the BlackHFY. It explained their coordination, their adaptability, and their potential weakness. "If they're alive," reasoned Admiral Okoye from her battered flagship, "then they can be confused, misdirected, even turned against each other." The new strategy was desperate but brilliant. Instead of trying to destroy the alien communication network, humanity would corrupt it. Feed it false information, contradictory orders, sensory data that would make the living ships question their own perceptions. Across the battle zone, human vessels began broadcasting chaos on the quantum frequencies the aliens used. Not random noise this time, but carefully crafted deception. Phantom fleets appeared on alien sensors. False distress calls drew ships away from their formations. Most devastating of all, the broadcasts began to convince some alien vessels that their neighbors were enemies. The first fratricidal engagement occurred near Mars' orbit, where 2 alien dreadnoughts turned their weapons on each other, convinced by corrupted sensor data that they faced human infiltrators. The confusion spread like a virus through the living fleet, their shared consciousness becoming a liability as doubt and paranoia flooded their communications. But the BlackHFY commanders, the ancient minds that directed the fleet, began to adapt. Slowly, painfully, they severed the connections between their ships, isolating each vessel to prevent the spread of human deception. The coordination that had made them invincible was sacrificed to maintain unit integrity. "Now," Admiral Okoye commanded, "while they're isolated, all units concentrate fire on the command ships." The scattered human fleet, reinforced by every civilian vessel brave enough to join the fight, focused their attacks on the largest alien vessels. Without coordination, the BlackHFY formation began to collapse. Ships designed to fight as part, of a collective found themselves alone and vulnerable. On Earth's surface, the planetary defense grid fired its final volleys. The fusion reactors buried within Luna were dying, their fuel exhausted after hours of continuous fire. But they had served their purpose, carving holes in the alien formation that human ships could exploit. Emergency Coordinator Delmar stood in the Global Defense Center, watching as reports flooded in from around the world. The underground cities were holding, their fusion reactors providing both power and hope. But on the surface, entire regions lay in ruins from the alien bombardment. Casualty estimates? He asked quietly. Preliminary figures suggest 2 billion dead or missing, reported analyst Ming, her voice hollow with shock. Major population centers in ruins, infrastructure destroyed across 3 continents. The numbers were staggering, but Delmar found himself focusing on a different statistic. 5 billion humans were still alive, still fighting, still refusing to surrender. The species would survive this day, scarred, but unbroken. In the depths of space, Captain Ashworth of the Relentless found himself facing 3 alien fighters with weapons depleted and engines failing. His ship was dying, atmosphere venting through. A dozen hull breaches, but the enemy vessels were damaged too, their crystalline hulls cracked and bleeding luminescent fluid. Ramming speed, he ordered calmly, his bridge crew strapping themselves in for the final maneuver. The destroyer accelerated toward the nearest alien ship, its hull groaning under the stress. The impact was spectacular and final. Both vessels disappeared in a brilliant explosion that lit up the inner system. It was one of hundreds of such sacrifices made that day, each one representing humanity's refusal to accept defeat. As the battle raged into its 6th hour, the tide began to turn. The alien fleet, designed for swift conquest of helpless worlds, found itself engaged in a grinding war of attrition against an enemy that simply would not quit. Their living ships, bred for thousands of years of unopposed expansion, began to experience something new: fear. The fear spread through their quantum, communications like a contagion. Ancient vessels that had witnessed the fall of countless civilizations found themselves questioning their own immortality. The humans were supposed to die quickly, quietly, like all the others. Instead, they fought with a ferocity that bordered on madness. High above Earth's scarred surface, Admiral Okoye received a transmission that changed everything. It came not from the alien fleet, but from the edge of the solar system, from ships that bore human markings but had never been seen before. "This is Commander Xiphus Kane of the Colonial Defense Force," the voice announced. "Apologies for the delay. We came as soon as we received your message." On the tactical display, new contacts appeared. Sleek ships with weapon signatures unlike anything in the solar defense fleet. The Generation ships had returned, but they were no longer the same vessels that had left Earth decades ago. They had been transformed, militarized, turned into weapons of war by humans who had spent generations preparing for this moment. The cavalry had arrived, and they were magnificent. The Colonial Defense Force emerged from the outer darkness like vengeful angels, their ships bearing technologies that earthbound humanity had only dreamed of. Generation ships that had left the solar system as explorers had returned as warships, their hulls bristling with weapons developed in the cold spaces between stars. Commander Kane's voice carried across the battle-scarred system with quiet authority. "Earth Command, this is New Horizons. We've been listening to your transmissions for the past 72 hours. The colonies stand with the homeworld." Admiral Okoye felt tears she hadn't allowed herself to shed burning her eyes. "Commander Kane, you're a sight for sore eyes. What's your tactical assessment?" "We've been studying these Velketh for longer than you might think, Admiral. This isn't their first attempt at harvesting human worlds. 3 of our outer colonies detected advanced scouts years ago. We've been preparing." The revelation sent shockwaves through the human command structure. While Earth had been unaware of the approaching threat, the scattered children of humanity had been quietly building defenses across dozens of star systems. We developed countermeasures, Kane continued as his ships took formation alongside Earth's battered defenders. Weapons specifically designed to exploit the quantum entanglement they use for communication. When we disrupt their network, they don't just lose coordination, they lose their collective consciousness entirely. The colonial ships opened fire with weapons that seemed to twist space itself. Where their beams struck alien vessels, the crystalline hulls didn't just crack. They dissolved, their quantum structure unraveling at the molecular level. The living ships of the BlackHFY began to die in ways their species had never experienced. Panic rippled through the alien fleet as their ancient confidence finally shattered. These humans were not the helpless primitives they had expected to harvest. They were a species that had spread across the galaxy, learning and adapting and preparing for war on a cosmic scale. But the BlackHFY were not finished. From the largest of their vessels, a biomechanical leviathan the size of a small moon, came a transmission that chilled every human who heard it. Impressive, humans of Terra 3. Your species shows potential we did not anticipate, but you have seen only a fraction of the Dominion's power. What approaches now will teach you the price of defiance. New contacts appeared at the edge of the system. Massive beyond comprehension, they dwarfed even the largest BlackHFY vessels. Ancient things that predated human civilization, weapons, built by species whose names were forgotten across the galaxy. Dr. Rothwell, monitoring the approaching horror from her underground laboratory, felt her blood turn to ice. The energy signatures? They're star killers, planet crackers. If they reach Earth, they won't, interrupted a new voice on the communication channel. It was calm, confident, and utterly human. This is Director Mays Corvin of the Deep Space Research Division. We've been waiting for this moment. High above Earth's atmosphere, previously invisible stations began to decloak. Humanity's most secret project, decades in the making, finally revealed itself. The stations weren't weapons in any conventional sense. They were something far more audacious. Initiating gravitational cascade, Director Corvin announced. All ships, clear the target zone immediately. The stations began to resonate in perfect harmony, their exotic matter cores creating standing waves in space-time itself. What they generated wasn't a weapon, it was a trap. A gravitational anomaly that would drag everything within its influence into an artificially created black hole. The approaching BlackHFY planet killers, moving at significant fractions of light speed, couldn't alter course in time. One by one, they vanished into the event horizon, their ancient hulls crushed beyond recognition by forces that unmade matter itself. The cost was enormous. Earth's secret stations died in the effort, their exotic matter cores consumed in the gravitational cascade. But they had served their purpose. The ultimate weapons of the BlackHFY Dominion had been neutralized by human ingenuity and sacrifice. What remained of the alien fleet, perhaps a tenth of their original force, found themselves facing not just Earth's defenders, but the combined might of human civilization. Ships from colonies scattered across dozens of star systems, each one carrying weapons and tactics developed through generations of preparation. The battle's end came not with a bang, but with silence. The last BlackHFY vessel, its crystalline hull cracked and bleeding, transmitted a final message. The Dominion will remember this day. Your species has earned a different fate than we intended. The galaxy will know that humans are not prey. Then it was gone, jumping to hyperspace with the few survivors of humanity's first interstellar war. In the aftermath, as rescue ships searched the debris fields and casualty reports flooded in, humanity took stock of what had been lost and gained. 3 billion dead on Earth alone, entire fleets sacrificed, technologies exhausted, and worlds scarred. But they had won. More than that, they had announced to the galaxy that humanity would not go gently into any dark night. They had raised their shields, charged their cannons, and said no to extinction itself. Admiral Okoye, standing on the bridge of her battered flagship, looked out at the stars and smiled grimly. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers. But it was also full of humans now. Humans who had learned that sometimes the only way to ensure peace was to prepare for war. Earth endured. Humanity endured. And across the cosmic dark, ancient civilizations whispered a new name with something approaching. Respect. The species that had looked into the abyss and told it to blink first. The age of human expansion was about to begin.